The calm of Earth was shattered without warning. Across the globe, every television screen flickered to life, broadcasting a message that would forever change the course of humanity. An immense fleet of alien warships appeared, blocking out the sun over major cities. Towering metal giants hovered above the Earth, casting terrifying shadows over the planet. The world collectively held its breath as the message began. The voice that came through the broadcast was cold, emotionless, yet filled with a chilling sense of superiority. It belonged to the leader of the Galactic Empire, a vast and ancient force that had already conquered countless civilizations across the galaxy. This voice spoke directly to humanity, mocking the Earth's technological advancements. Humanity, it sneered, you are insignificant. Your technology is primitive. Your defenses laughable. You stand no chance against us. We have come to claim your world. As the broadcast continued, the camera panned to the towering alien ships hovering over Earth. The people below were speechless, staring up at the enormous vessels that seemed to blot out the sky. The warships were not just ships. They were cities of destruction, equipped with weapons powerful enough to destroy entire nations in a matter of seconds. Earth's defense systems, once thought to be impenetrable, were dwarfed in comparison to the vast power of the Empire's fleet. In every corner of the world, people rushed to their radios, televisions, and phones, desperately trying to comprehend what was happening. Some tried to flee, while others froze, paralyzed by fear. The leaders of Earth's nations scrambled to come up with a plan, but it was clear the Galactic Empire had already won. The sheer size of the alien fleet was beyond anything Earth had ever seen. It stretched across the sky like an endless wall of destruction. The cameras showed fleets of smaller fighter-like ships swooping down, circling the globe. These ships were equipped with advanced cloaking technology and laser weapons, a terrifying preview of the assault that would soon follow. The message continued, its tone growing more contemptuous. We give you one chance to surrender, Earth. Stand down and submit to the will of the Galactic Empire. Your world is ours. Resistance is futile. You have been warned. The broadcast ended abruptly, leaving the world in stunned silence. But amid the panic, there was a voice that cut through the chaos, a voice that carried with it the weight of defiance, a voice that would give humanity its last hope. Standing in front of a crowded hall of world leaders, Captain Alec Drake of Earth's military delivered a message of his own. He was a tall, commanding figure, his deep-set eyes filled with unwavering determination. As he stood before the leaders of Earth's remaining defense forces, he spoke with the calm authority of a man who had faced the impossible and won. They think we are weak, Captain Drake said, his voice steady but carrying the full force of a man who knew what was at stake. They think we will cower in fear, but they are wrong. This is our home, and we will fight to the last breath to protect it. His words echoed through the room, sending a ripple of hope through the assembly. Yet outside, the news spread that the Empire's ships were already positioning themselves to strike. The world trembled at the thought of the coming invasion. Every country began preparing for what seemed like an inevitable attack. Military forces scrambled to gather whatever weapons they could, but the truth was clear. The Earth was outmatched, outgunned, and outnumbered. The camera zoomed in on the faces of the people, their fear written across every expression. From the bustling streets of New York City to the ancient monuments of Europe, humanity was faced with an enemy so powerful that all hope seemed lost. But through the fear, through the overwhelming sense of helplessness, Captain Drake's message was heard. Across every broadcast, every screen, his defiant words rang true. We warned you. Your worlds will burn. The message sent a shockwave across the planet. The Galactic Empire's leader, sitting aboard their flagship, laughed dismissively at Earth's response. To them, it was a joke. They had crushed civilizations far more powerful than Earth with barely a flicker of resistance. This human defiance, this display of strength, was nothing more than a fleeting moment. They believed it would soon be extinguished. The tension was palpable, But amidst the looming threat of annihilation, something remarkable began to stir within humanity. Captain Drake's words were not just a declaration, they were a rallying cry. The people of Earth, despite their fear, began to rally behind him. They were no longer willing to accept their fate. If they were going to die, they would die fighting, not surrendering. The next few days were filled with frantic preparation. World leaders gathered together to form a unified front, with the help of the few military strategists who dared to offer solutions. But for all their efforts, one thing was clear. Earth had no way of matching the power of the Galactic Empire. The enemy's technology far surpassed anything humanity had ever known. The most advanced weapons, the fastest ships, the most powerful fleets, they were all at the Empire's disposal. But what the Empire didn't know was that humanity, despite its technological disadvantages, had something that no empire could ever comprehend: resolve. As the days passed, and the Empire's ships continued their ominous approach, Earth's forces did something unexpected. They began to innovate. Working in secret, top scientists and engineers collaborated with military leaders, determined to find a way to fight back. The world's greatest minds came together to create a weapon that could level the playing field. It was humanity's last chance, and they poured every ounce of effort into it. But time was running out. The Empire's invasion was imminent. The message of defiance had already been sent, and now it was time for action. Captain Drake and his team knew they had to move fast if they were to have any hope of stopping the Empire's assault. Earth was on the brink of destruction, and only one thing could save it: humanity's will to fight. With every passing hour, the Empire's fleet drew closer, their warships growing larger in the sky. The world waited for the inevitable. Many feared it was already too late. But then, in the final moments before the attack, something remarkable happened. Humanity's response was not one of fear, but of determination. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the Galactic Empire had ever faced. The stakes were higher than ever before, and humanity's fight for survival would become the defining moment of its history. Captain Alec Drake stood ready, his mind focused on the one thing that mattered most: victory. The Empire had made a grave mistake in underestimating Earth, and they were about to learn that the humans they had mocked were not as weak as they thought. This was their fight, their world, and no alien force was going to take it from them. The warning had been sent. The Earth's defense had begun. The stage was set for a battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. The quiet hum of Earth's defenses was shattered in the most brutal way imaginable. The first orbital bombardment from the Galactic Empire was like the heavens themselves breaking open. Across the planet, people looked up to the skies in horror as waves of bright, fiery explosions rained down on major cities. Skyscrapers crumbled, streets erupted in fire, and entire neighborhoods were wiped off the map in a single strike. It was the kind of destruction no one thought possible in the modern age, yet here it was. The death toll rose by the second, and humanity's spirit began to shatter. But in the midst of this chaos, a small flicker of hope remained, barely perceptible but undeniable. There were those who refused to surrender to despair, who believed that the fight was far from over. Among them was Captain Alec Drake, a seasoned military leader who had already proven his unwavering resolve, and Dr. Maya Ilara, a brilliant scientist who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to develop a strategy to fight back. While Earth's defense systems faltered under the overwhelming firepower of the Galactic Empire, Captain Drake knew that something had to change. The AI-driven defense systems that had once been Earth's most formidable line of defense were failing. The Empire's advanced technology seemed unstoppable, and every attempt to push back their forces was met with disaster. Earth's military was scattered, unable to unify in the face of such overwhelming odds. People were starting to lose hope, questioning if humanity could survive such a vicious onslaught. In the shadows of this global despair, Captain Drake and Dr. Maya Ilara worked together, their minds focused on a single goal: to find a way to fight back. Dr. Ilara, known for her sharp intellect and visionary thinking, had been working on something extraordinary, something that could potentially turn the tide. She had always believed in the resilience of humanity, and now she was more determined than ever to prove that belief was not misplaced. Captain Drake, though initially skeptical, began to see a glimmer of possibility in Ilara's plans. The two formed an unlikely but powerful partnership, united by a shared resolve to protect Earth from annihilation. As they spent long hours in dark laboratories and war rooms, their connection grew deeper, not just through their shared mission, but through a bond that transcended the battlefield. There was something more between them now, a quiet but undeniable affection, a trust that came from seeing one another's dedication, strength, and courage in the face of impossible odds. While the world around them continued to crumble, Drake and Ilara remained focused. They knew that the Empire's forces would only grow stronger, and that the first assault was just the beginning. The time to act was now. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for everything humanity had ever known. The future of Earth rested in their hands, and they couldn't afford to fail. After countless sleepless nights and tense strategy sessions, a solution began to take shape. Dr. Ilara's breakthrough was nothing short of revolutionary. Together with a team of engineers and military officers, she developed a new class of human-made starships, ships that were unlike anything the world had ever seen. These ships were equipped with AI-driven systems that could rival those of the Empire, cloaking devices that could make them nearly invisible to enemy radar, and devastating weaponry capable of dealing significant damage to even the largest of enemy ships. These ships weren't just a defense, they were Earth's first real chance at an offensive strike. If they could get these ships into the battle, they might just stand a chance of turning the tide. But the task of building and deploying them was monumental. Earth's resources were stretched thin, and time was running out. The Empire's fleet was advancing, and another attack could come at any moment. Despite these overwhelming odds, Drake remained resolute. He knew they had to unite Earth's fractured military forces, combining the best minds, the strongest warriors, and the most advanced technology. The world was divided, but if humanity had any hope of surviving, they had to come together as one. Drake traveled across the globe, visiting the leaders of different nations, speaking to the generals of the scattered military forces. Many of them were skeptical, some outright refused to believe in the possibility of victory. The Galactic Empire's power seemed unassailable, and no one wanted to risk the lives of their people on what appeared to be a doomed mission. But there were a few small factions, underground resistance groups, and military units that believed in Captain Drake. They saw the spark of hope in his words, the fire in his eyes, and they rallied behind him. Slowly but surely, Earth's military forces began to unite, not in fear, but in defiance. The resistance was born. As the warships from the Galactic Empire continued to hover above the Earth, ready to strike again, the first of the human-made starships were completed. They were sleek, intimidating, and capable of taking on the Empire's most powerful ships. But they weren't ready for full-scale battle yet. There was still much to be done. And the resistance had no time to waste. The emotional stakes were rising. For every day that passed, more lives were lost. The death toll grew as orbital bombardments continued, with entire cities falling to the Empire's merciless attack. Families were torn apart, and the flames of war spread faster than anyone had anticipated. The deaths of innocent civilians sparked an intense desire for vengeance. The people of Earth, who had once felt helpless and insignificant, now burned with a need to fight back, to make the Empire pay for the lives lost, for the families torn apart. Drake and Ilara, however, knew that vengeance alone wasn't enough. They needed more than just a desire for revenge. They needed strategy, precision, and strength. Their starships represented not just a weapon, but a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. Each ship was a reminder that no matter how overwhelming the odds, humanity would never go down without a fight. It wasn't just about fighting for survival. It was about fighting for the future of every person on Earth, for the future of their children, for the world they had built. In the quiet moments, when the pressure was almost too much to bear, Drake and Elara found themselves reflecting on everything they had lost and everything they still had to gain. Their bond, forged in the fires of war, had become something far deeper than they had ever expected. Together, they knew they could face anything. They had already lost so much, but the fight was far from over. And as the first salvo of attacks rained down once again on Earth, this time it would be different. The resistance was ready. The fight for Earth's survival had begun, and the Galactic Empire would soon learn that humanity wasn't as weak as they had thought. The Empire may have had the power, but humanity had something they would never understand: resolve. The fires of vengeance burned brightly now, and the resistance would not stop until every last shred of the Empire's cruelty was eradicated. The tension was unbearable as Captain Alec Drake and his team watched from the command center. The Empire's fleet was closing in on Earth, their warships massive and intimidating as they hovered in space, ready to deliver another crushing blow to humanity. It was now or never. The Resistance had prepared for this moment for weeks, but now that it had arrived, every moment seemed to stretch on forever. Humanity's last hope rested on a single strike, a strike that could change everything, or end it all. Captain Drake stood before the battle map, his mind racing. The newly developed human-made starships, powered by AI, cloaking devices, and deadly weaponry, were ready for their first real test. The sleek ships had been designed with one goal in mind: to get in close to the Empire's fleet without being detected and strike hard. Their cloaking technology was humanity's best chance to break through the Empire's defenses undetected. If they could make it past the first wave of enemy ships, they might just have a shot at taking down the fleet and buying Earth some time. "Ready to move out, Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Jax, Drake's most trusted officer. Jax had been with him since the beginning of the war, and now, as the first wave of human ships prepared to launch, the weight of their mission pressed down on them all. Drake nodded firmly, his eyes scanning the faces of the men and women around him. There was no turning back now. The battle for Earth had begun. As the first human ships left the launch bays, a sense of urgency filled the air. The ships were smaller and faster than the Empire's massive warships, designed to slip past enemy sensors undetected. The cloaking technology shimmered faintly, wrapping the ships in an invisible shield. They moved like shadows through the stars, silent and deadly, drawing closer to the heart of the Empire's fleet. Drake's heart raced as he watched the screens. The moment of truth had arrived. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown to either victory or doom. The cloaking devices kept them hidden, but they wouldn't be able to stay that way forever. Once they struck, their presence would be known, and the fight would begin. As the fleet advanced, the tension among the crew grew. No one spoke, their faces hard and determined. There was no time for fear, only action. The Empire's fleet loomed larger in their viewports, a sea of warships bristling with weapons. Every ship was a potential death trap, each one capable of annihilating the human fleet in an instant. But humanity wasn't afraid anymore. They had come too far to back down now. Then, with a sudden jolt, the cloaking devices dropped. The first wave of human fighters burst out of the shadows, their weapons charged and ready. Laser beams streaked through the dark vacuum of space, illuminating the void as they fired on the Empire's unsuspecting ships. Explosions filled the air as enemy warships were hit, some breaking apart, others bursting into flames. The human fleet had breached the Empire's defenses. The battle had begun. The space around them erupted in chaos. The human ships darted through enemy lines with incredible speed, their weapons firing in rapid succession. The Empire's ships fired back, but the humans were faster, more agile. The sleek starfighters wove in and out of the massive enemy warships, dodging laser blasts and missile fire, always staying one step ahead. Explosions lit up the darkness, and the sound of gunfire echoed in the cold vacuum of space. In the midst of the chaos, Drake's voice came over the comms. Hold your ground, people. We've got one shot at this. Make it count. The human pilots fought with a ferocity born of desperation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but their resolve was stronger than any weapon the Empire could throw at them. Every move they made was a calculated risk. They dodged incoming fire, returned fire with precision, and kept pushing forward. The human fleet was holding its own, striking deep into the heart of the Empire's forces. But the battle wasn't over. It had barely begun. As the fight raged on, Drake's eyes were fixed on his communications screen. He scanned for Dr. Maya Ilara's ship, knowing that she was out there somewhere, leading the charge from the front lines. Ilara had been instrumental in developing the new human technology, and she had been one of the first to volunteer for this high-risk mission. If anyone could make a difference, it was her. Suddenly, a red alert flashed on Drake's screen. Ilara's ship had been hit. His heart skipped a beat. His fingers hovered over the controls, torn between continuing the battle and saving the woman who had become not only a trusted ally but a close companion. He couldn't afford to lose her. Not now. Not after everything they had fought for. Without thinking, Drake made his decision. Hold the line. He barked into the comms. I'm going after her. Ignoring the warnings from his crew, Drake fired up his ship's engines and tore through the battlefield. Explosions erupted around him as he made a beeline for Ilara's ship, which was now spiraling out of control, its engines damaged and its systems failing. He could see the damage clearly on his display, and his heart sank. But he couldn't afford to hesitate. The seconds felt like hours as Drake fought his way through enemy fire, narrowly avoiding enemy blasts. He watched as Ilara's ship spiraled closer to the Empire's massive warships. It was now or never. He was nearly there, but the enemy wasn't going to let him take her without a fight. The Empire's ships opened fire, and Drake's ship rocked as the shields took multiple hits. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, determined to save her no matter what. Then, with a final, desperate lunge, Drake's ship latched onto Ilara's damaged vessel. He hit the emergency release, sending a cable across the distance, and hauled her aboard his ship, just as an explosion rocked the area where her ship had been. Hold on, he yelled, his voice barely audible over the comms. Ilara, looking dazed but alive, was pulled into the cockpit, her face pale but determined. We're not done yet, she said, a faint smile crossing her lips. Drake didn't hesitate. Then let's finish this. The two of them, now back together, set their sights on the enemy forces once more. The battle raged around them, but their bond, forged in the heat of battle, made them unstoppable. Humanity's last hope was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight to show the Empire that Earth would never be crushed under their heel. The chaos around them continued, but in that moment, something changed. Humanity had proven something vital, that even in the face of impossible odds, they would never back down. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, humanity would fight for their future. And as the battle continued to rage in the void of space, Earth's fighters were no longer outmatched. With each strike, each successful defense, humanity's resolve grew stronger. The Galactic Empire would soon learn that their greatest mistake had been underestimating the strength of the human spirit. The tide had turned, and Earth's final hope was becoming a reality. The void of space was filled with chaos as humanity's final strike continued against the Galactic Empire. After a series of calculated hits, Earth's forces had gained some ground, pushing back the overwhelming fleet that had come to annihilate them. The enemy ships were beginning to show signs of damage. Explosions rocked the enemy lines, and their once perfect formations were starting to break apart. Humanity, the underdog, was holding its ground, defying the odds with every passing second. Captain Alec Drake stood at the forefront of this battle. His hands gripped the controls tightly, his mind sharp and focused. The newly developed human starships, with their cloaking devices and advanced weaponry, had proven to be a game-changer. For the first time in this war, it seemed as though victory was within reach. The human forces were dealing blows that the Empire's fleet couldn't ignore. and the tide of battle was slowly turning in their favor. But as they advanced, something shifted. An overwhelming wave of fear swept over the battlefield. A new threat had appeared. A massive warship, unlike anything the Empire had used before. Its size dwarfed every other ship in the fleet, and it loomed ominously in the distance, casting a shadow over the battle. This new weapon, built for one purpose, to crush entire cities, was about to be unleashed. This warship was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of the Empire's power. Supreme Overlord Xyros had prepared this final weapon in case humanity's resistance proved too strong. It was a last-ditch effort to wipe out any hope the humans had left. If this ship fell, the battle for Earth would be over. If the Empire's flagship fell, Earth would be free. But that was a big if. The odds were stacked against the human forces. The Empire's flagship was not only massive but heavily armored, bristling with weapons powerful enough to obliterate entire cities with a single blast. It was designed to end the war in one decisive strike. Humanity's remaining forces were battered and outgunned, with few ships left. The toll of the battle had already claimed many lives, and the human fleet had taken heavy losses. But Captain Drake wasn't going to back down. As the enemy warship advanced, Drake rallied his crew. His voice crackled over the comms, steady and resolute. "Listen up, everyone. This is it. This is our last chance. We either win this or Earth falls. But I'm not going down without a fight, and neither are you." He could hear the urgency in his voice, but he knew his crew needed to hear it. They needed to believe in the impossible because this was their final assault. The Empire had underestimated humanity. Now it was time to show them just how wrong they were. The remaining human ships, though damaged, powered up for one final push. As they aligned their sights on the massive warship, the scene erupted in a flurry of activity. The once quiet space around Earth became a battlefield. Fighters darted around, narrowly avoiding blasts from the Empire's ships, while returning fire with everything they had. The Empire's new warship unleashed devastating shots that shook the space around them. But the human fleet, smaller and more agile, was determined. "We're not going down without a fight," Captain Drake shouted, his voice filled with determination. He clenched his fists around the controls, as if willing his ship to be faster, more powerful, as if every ounce of his energy could help bring victory. The human fleet charged towards the Empire's flagship, each ship knowing this would be their final chance. In the distance, the camera zoomed in on the massive warship, it tall, dark, and foreboding. It began charging up its weapons, ready to unleash the firepower capable of wiping out entire cities. But the human fleet wasn't backing down. As they approached the enemy flagship, orbital bombardments rained down from above, their weapons striking the ship's shields with immense force. The shockwaves from each blast lit up the dark space, shaking the very foundations of the battlefield. Drake's ship led the charge, his heart pounding in his chest as the countdown to their final assault began. The camera zoomed in on his face, sweat dripping down as he maintained focus. His features were tense, the weight of humanity's survival resting on his shoulders. Every decision he made would impact the fate of Earth. The enemy warship loomed larger on the screens as they closed in. The final battle was now in full swing. The human ships unleashed their full arsenal, weapons firing relentlessly at the flagship. Explosions lit up the black sky, but the massive warship was a beast of endurance, its shield holding strong against the assault. Humanity's forces were taking heavy losses, their numbers dwindling with each second that passed. But Captain Drake refused to stop. His ship weaved through enemy fire, dodging blasts that would have obliterated any lesser vessel. His eyes never left the flagship as he directed his ship toward a weak spot he had identified earlier, a vulnerable section of the warship's hull. It was a risk, but it was the only chance they had. "Target the reactor core," Drake barked, his voice unwavering. "If we can take that down, we can bring the whole thing down." The human ships rallied, gathering all their remaining firepower and focusing on that weak spot. Laser beams and missiles rained down on the flagship, hitting its defenses with everything humanity had left. The flagship's shields flickered under the assault, but they held strong. As the human ships closed in, the tension reached a breaking point. It was now or never. The final push came. Drake's ship was the first to reach the flagship, and with one final devastating shot, he aimed for the reactor core. The shot struck true. The camera captured the explosion in slow motion, the massive warship's hull splitting open as its reactor core ignited. In that moment, the flagship's shields failed, and its weapons went silent. The explosion that followed was catastrophic. The shockwave from the blast sent out ripples through space, knocking the remaining Empire ships off course. As the flagship's remnants drifted into the void, the Empire's remaining warships scattered. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But the victory came at a heavy price. The human fleet had been decimated. Captain Drake's ship, along with the remaining fighters, limped back to Earth, their systems failing and their fuel running low. As they approached Earth, the once helpless planet now stood tall in the face of the Empire's defeat. Humanity had proven that no matter the odds, they could fight back. Captain Drake stood, staring at the fading remnants of the Empire's warship in the distance. He knew this battle was just the beginning. But for now, Earth had won. They had survived, and they had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The fight for Earth was over, but the war was far from won. The battle was over, and Earth had emerged victorious. The Galactic Empire's flagship, once an imposing force of destruction, had been torn apart by humanity's final strike. The remaining Empire warships scattered, retreating in disarray as the human fleet limped back toward Earth. The destruction left in the wake of the battle was immense, and yet, despite their victory, there was no feeling of triumph. Instead, there was a deep sense of loss. As Captain Alec Drake stood on the bridge of his ship, staring out at the remnants of the enemy fleet, his thoughts were heavy. The victory had come at a high cost, one that would not easily be forgotten. The final blow to the Empire had been delivered, but many lives had been lost in the process, including the life of one of his closest comrades. Bonner, a beloved soldier in their unit, had died heroically during the battle. His ship had been hit in the final assault on the Empire's flagship, and despite the valiant efforts to save him, he had been lost. Bonner's death was a painful reminder of the sacrifice it took to achieve victory. Drake's mind lingered on his fallen comrade, remembering all the times they had fought side by side, facing impossible odds and surviving together. Now, Bonner was gone, and Drake was left to carry the weight of that loss. The victory, while sweet in its own right, felt hollow. For every victory they had claimed, there was a life lost, a family torn apart. The harsh reality of war had come into full view. The battle had been won, but the cost was immeasurable. Drake turned away from the viewport, his eyes searching for some solace. He found it in Dr. Maya Ilara, who stood quietly by his side. Her face was weary, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. She, too, had lost friends and comrades in the conflict. Together, they had pushed humanity's forces to the brink, creating weapons that had leveled the playing field against a vastly superior enemy. But at what cost? The battle may have been won, but the scars left behind would last a lifetime. Without a word, Ilara stepped closer to Drake. There was no need for grand speeches or expressions of gratitude. They both understood the price of victory. They had fought for Earth, for the future of humanity, but they had paid dearly for it. The weight of their responsibility hung heavily over them. "We did it," Ilara said quietly, her voice tinged with sorrow. But at what cost? Drake sighed, the exhaustion of the battle catching up with him. "We saved Earth, but I don't think we'll ever be the same again." The memories of the invasion still haunted him. The Empire had attacked Earth with ruthless precision, its warships laying waste to entire cities, destroying everything in their path. The loss of innocent lives had been staggering. The images of burning buildings, the screams of civilians caught in the chaos, and the helplessness of those who had tried to flee were etched into his mind. They had been powerless to stop it in the beginning, and it had felt as though the world was slipping through their fingers. But somehow, humanity had fought back, defying the Empire's expectations and striking a blow that would forever change the course of history. Yet, as Drake thought about the destruction and death that had accompanied their victory, a heavy sadness settled in his chest. He could still hear the cries of the innocent, the families torn apart by the Empire's invasion. The victory had been bought with their blood. It was hard to reconcile that reality with the idea of triumph. Ilara, too, was lost in her thoughts. She had seen it all: the horrors of the invasion, the loss of so many lives, and the sacrifices made by their fellow soldiers. And yet, in the midst of all that suffering, she had seen humanity's strength. Despite the overwhelming odds, despite the power of the Galactic Empire, Earth had fought back. Humanity had shown resilience, ingenuity, and an unbreakable will to survive. They had proven that they were not weak, that they could stand tall in the face of adversity. But the price for that strength was too high. In the quiet moments that followed, the weight of their shared losses hung between them. Neither spoke of the future, because neither knew what it would hold. The battle for Earth was over, but the war was far from won. There were still scars to heal, and the rebuilding would take time. The human spirit was resilient, but even the strongest of spirits could only endure so much. As Drake and Ilara walked through the ship, their footsteps echoing in the silent hallways, they passed the memorial wall. It was a simple structure, but it carried the names of those who had fallen in the battle. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, and civilians. Every life lost was etched into that wall. For each name, there was a story, a person who had given everything to protect Earth. The reality of the sacrifices made was impossible to ignore. Drake's eyes lingered on the names. Bonner's name was at the top of the list. He had been one of the first to volunteer when the call had come for soldiers to fight back. He had always been there for Drake, standing beside him through every mission, every battle. His loss felt like a part of Drake's soul had been ripped away. Bonner was a good man, Ilara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, Drake replied, his voice thick with emotion. He was one of the best. They both stood in silence, remembering the man who had fought for Earth without hesitation, who had believed in the cause with everything he had. His sacrifice, along with so many others, had made this victory possible. But in the quiet moments, it was hard to shake the feeling that victory had come at too great a price. The rebuilding would take years. Earth had been left in ruins after the invasion, and while the Galactic Empire's threat had been neutralized, the scars of war would never fully heal. Cities had been leveled, millions of lives had been lost, and entire communities had been wiped out. The memories of those who had perished would linger long after the battle had ended. Drake and Ilara understood that. The victory over the Galactic Empire was important, but it was not the end. The human race had proven that they could survive, but survival was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, challenges that no one could predict. But as long as there were those willing to fight for a better future, humanity would endure. The silence between them grew as they walked, each lost in their thoughts. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The price of victory had been steep, and no one would ever forget the cost of that battle. As Drake looked out over the Earth, now free from the Empire's grasp, he knew the fight was far from over. But for now, humanity had triumphed, and they would rebuild. Together. The final blows had been struck. The mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire lay in ruins, its massive warships scattered across the void of space. Earth had won. After months of fighting against overwhelming odds, humanity had delivered a blow that would reverberate throughout the galaxy for centuries to come. The once dominant empire, with its powerful armada and its claim over countless star systems, was no more. The heart of the empire, its most formidable warships, and its fearsome leaders had all been reduced to nothing. Earth had become more than just a survivor. It had become the very symbol of defiance and strength in the face of impossible odds. As the remnants of the alien forces retreated, defeated and broken, the reality of their downfall set in. Earth had proven to be a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire had underestimated humanity's strength, its ingenuity, and its will to survive. The technologically superior alien invaders, who had once laughed at the idea of humans standing up to them, were now fleeing in fear. They had learned the hard way that humanity's spirit was unbreakable, that no matter how advanced an enemy might be, humans would never be easily defeated. The camera zooms out, revealing Earth's skyline, once scared by destruction, now slowly being rebuilt. Towering skyscrapers gleam in the light of a new dawn, a symbol of the resilience that had carried humanity through this war. The once ruined cities now stand tall and proud, their infrastructure stronger than before, their people united. The war-torn land is being restored, not just physically, but in the hearts and minds of those who had fought so hard to protect it. They had lost so much, but they had won the ultimate prize: their freedom and the future of their planet. As the sun rises over Earth's horizon, its golden rays cast a warm glow over the streets, the homes, and the people. The world is at peace once more, and for the first time in years, there is no fear, no looming threat. The air is filled with a sense of hope, of new beginnings. Humanity has not just survived the invasion. They have come out of it stronger, more united, and ready to defend their planet from any future threats. Captain Alec Drake, his face weathered by the trials of war, but filled with a quiet sense of pride, stands on the balcony of the new command center, overlooking the city below. By his side is Dr. Maya Ilara, her expression thoughtful, yet filled with hope. The two of them had led humanity's charge against the Empire, their bond forged through countless battles, sacrifices, and shared losses. They had witnessed the worst of humanity's struggle, and now they were witnessing the fruits of that struggle. Drake turns to Ilara, his eyes filled with determination. "It's over," he says softly, though the weight of the words still feels heavy. "We've done it." Ilara nods, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes, but the work isn't done. The rebuilding, the healing, it will take time." She pauses, her voice tinged with hope. "But we've proven something important. We've shown that humanity is capable of great things. We've shown that, no matter how big the enemy, we can fight back. And we've won." A quiet silence falls between them, the weight of everything they've endured settling in. There's a sense of peace now, but it's not without its cost. The war may be over, but the scars it left will take time to heal. The families who lost loved ones, the cities that were destroyed, the lives that were shattered, none of that can be erased overnight. But there is hope now, and that hope is enough to start rebuilding. "We've lost a lot," Drake says, his voice quiet and steady, "but we've gained even more. Not just victory, but something more important. We've gained our place in the galaxy." Ilara turns to him, her expression softening. "And we'll protect it. All of it. The galaxy may have underestimated us, but we'll make sure they never forget what humanity is capable of." The two of them stand there for a moment, looking out over the vast expanse of the world they had fought so hard to protect. The stars above, once a reminder of the unknown, now seemed to be full of promise. Earth was no longer just a small planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. It had become the beating heart of something greater. Humanity had proved that they were not to be taken lightly, that they were not just survivors, but conquerors in their own right. As they stand in silence, the camera slowly pans out, capturing the peaceful scene around them. The streets below are filled with people, walking, talking, and working together to rebuild the world. The once ruined cities are now thriving with life, with humanity's determination shining through in every corner. The world had been through so much, but it had come out stronger on the other side. The scars of war would never fade completely, but they would serve as a reminder of how far humanity had come. As the camera pulls back even further, we see the galaxy beyond, a vast expanse of stars and planets, each holding its own mysteries, its own challenges. The war with the Galactic Empire had been won, but there was still so much to explore, so much to protect. The universe was still full of unknowns, and humanity would be ready for whatever came next. They had learned the hard way that peace was not guaranteed, but now they had the strength to face any threat, no matter where it came from. Drake and Ilara stand side by side, looking up at the stars. The peace that has settled over Earth is fragile, but it is there, and for the first time in years, it feels like the future is bright. Ilara speaks, her voice full of hope. Maybe now we can have the future we've always dreamed of. Maybe now we can make the galaxy a place of peace. Drake looks at her, his expression thoughtful. We fight not for revenge, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves, he says firmly. His words hang in the air, a reminder of the true purpose behind their struggle. They had fought not just for their own survival, but for the survival of others, for the safety of those who could not defend themselves. And now, they had earned the right to stand tall, to protect their world and their future. As the camera slowly fades to black, the words echo in the minds of the audience. We fight not for revenge, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. It is a powerful message, one that resonates with hope, with a sense of purpose, and with the understanding that humanity's greatest strength lies not in its technology or its weapons, but in its heart. And with that, the story ends, leaving the audience with a sense of satisfaction, of fulfillment. Earth has triumphed, but the fight for a peaceful future continues. The future is bright, and humanity's place in the galaxy is secured. The stars shine brightly above, a reminder of the limitless potential of humanity and the unbreakable spirit that will continue to drive them forward.